And we're back.
Good morning, Nicholas. Happy Friday. How are you?
Happy Friday.
Oh, I'm excited for today.
Are you?
Hmm.
Means the life down south is all great and no snow flying your way?
Oh, no, that's not true. We're supposed to get snow later today, but it's been gorgeous. We've had, well, you're in the weird Celsius degrees. I say that as the American. We've had like 60-degree days recently. It's been unreal. It's gorgeous. Hello to everyone who is joining us this morning. If you're here, drop a hello in chat. Say that you're here. I'd love to say hello to you. Both Nick and I would. We're so grateful you're here this Friday morning. We get to talk about fun topics here every Friday. And today is definitely no exception to that, eh? We've got
Amen.
a great thing to dive in this morning. So if you're here, say hello. And you know what? Tag a friend. Be like, hey, you should check out the stream if you want. And if you want to hold off on that, then like, okay, sure. Wait 30 minutes and be like, these guys kind of know what they're talking about. Or at least we hope we do.
Hello,
Uh,
Paul.
hey, Paul. Um, the Okay, so to get started, Nick, are you ready to dive in?
Yeah. And thank you everyone that's been reaching out on DMs and the comments because this show is for you guys.
Mm-hmm.
And it all comes from what we keep hearing are the problems. And through our experimentations and reverse engineering, that's where these shows come from. So
Mm-hmm.
you said, my as an SDR, BDR, I get these account lists from marketing and I have no clue why. Why them? And so it really hurts their outreach. And so they get no background information. Or they require the SDR or BDRs to go and create their own account list or full cycle AEs. And it's like a scatter shot, like a shotgun. And what I keep seeing is they can't forecast well with any
Mm-hmm.
accuracy because it's all a hope and a prayer. It's an emotion. I feel like this is going to close.
Right.
Or they're sending emails. They're getting less than a 50% open rate, and they're getting, maybe a 10% reply rate, which is now shrinking down to like 5%. And they're
Mm-hmm.
getting a less than a 1% pickup rate on their cold calls. And they're wondering, Nick, Morgan, what the hell? Like, how
What
do
can we do?
how do we build pipeline? And who the hell do we talk to?
Yes.
And it seems to be this growing problem. So we're going to dive in today.
Yep. And good morning to Lydia and Jesse and Kinder and Jeffrey. Great to have you here, and everybody else who's watching in who hasn't commented yet, because I know there are those. Um, One of the things that the reason I think we decided on this topic today was all these conversations that were happening. And as Nick said, we continue to just experiment and try stuff out. We're like, does this does this cold DM approach work? And with clients we work with people who just send us messages, and we're like, hey, how should we do this? And
Yeah.
I keep on coming back to this, the fundamental, I don't know, thesis or the fundamental idea of today. If we want to be really fancy, we'd call it the thesis. Is that um, being intentional and doing the front end work required, which may feel slow, right, compared to what you're currently doing. It may feel like, oh God, why are we spending so much time on the front end? I just want to go get into these accounts and get their attention, all the rest of it. We
Are
hear
you
this
talking
on our.
about us and how we do our prospecting? Morgan,
Yeah.
no, we don't need to create a new website again.
I
God.
know. Come on, man. I'm telling you. No, all of this intentional front end work is what makes us successful. And when we take a moment, pause, assess the landscape, and actually do some front end account strategy. And this isn't account strategy like, let's write up a one little page, let's put everybody's name on the page about who's on the buying committee and what their titles are, and then run an 18 email sequence to every stakeholder. Like, that's not account strategy. That's just old school, traditional outbound that will get you. Yeah, it's just a shotgun. It's just average results, and it's an average, outdated playbook that a lot of people run because they don't know what to do instead. So we've been experimenting with some new approaches, and we want to share those with you today, this morning. So at any time you got questions, This is your hour. Drop them in the comments. Be like, hey, Morgan, I don't understand. Hey, Nick, what about this? Good morning to folks who are commenting. Riaz, hello from sunny London. And to other folks at Radiate who are watching. Lovely to have you join. So, Nick, where do you want to start? What's the first thing we should be doing?
I got to start with a big question.
Okay.
And the big question is the juice worth the squeeze?
Oh, squeeze me. Juice me.
Just stop. Just stop. But think about it. If you're going after accounts, and JBay actually said this to me yesterday, and it really got me thinking, account-based marketing, account-based sales development, or just proper territory and account management is the juice worth the squeeze.
Mhm.
If you're selling something under $1,000, you cannot afford to spend more than 3 to 5 minutes doing relevance and personalization at scale.
Mhm.
If you're over $1,000, maybe up to 10,000, you might want to spend 10 to 15 minutes. Once you get over that, if you're going and tackling an executive at an enterprise or mid-market company that's getting hit with emails, with LinkedIn approaches, with everything every single day,
Mm.
how are you going to stand out with the bullshit email sequence that doesn't actually get to the heart of the problem? And I compare this to when I walk home, and as you guys know, I'm a beer geek, and I can nerd out on beer all the time.
It's true. It's
Do
so
you want to
true.
throw your favorite beer in the comments? You will be best friends. But and I'll go and tell her about this new batch that I just formulated, or how I went and I'm looking at this new gear, and I can see her eyes glaze over and her about to like pass out because she's like, I don't care.
Mm-mm.
That's what the executives are doing when you make it about I. Look at your emails. I. It doesn't work.
Mhm.
And so we got to change that around.
Mhm.
And that's why you have to ask yourself, is the juice worth the squeeze?
Yeah, are the accounts worth it? Because if ultimately what we're going to lay out today is some upfront work that you can do for these accounts that are probably higher dollar value. And the reality is, if you're only selling, I don't know, $2,000 average contract value deals or deal sizes, that's going to be really hard to execute at scale. And that is a conversation you have to have with yourself to figure out if you want to continue to sell deals like that, and also how supported you are by other functions like marketing particularly is particularly equipped with skills to generate deals, inbound deals at that contract value. But when we go larger, there's a specific approach or a couple of different approaches that we figured out work really well. So the juice has to be worth the squeeze.
And there's nothing wrong with selling at certain levels. It's just the
No.
approach changes. I want to be very
Yes.
clear. And
Hmm.
also the connection with the other RevOps teams will heighten
Hmm.
because you have to be on point. You have to
Hmm.
be connected. You have to be sharing information. All of this must flow, or you'll look like an idiot, or nothing will happen.
The spice must flow, Nicholas.
The spice.
The spice must flow. So they figured out the juice is worth a squeeze.
Yeah.
Then what?
So if you're
Like,
under a
yes,
thousand,
this deals is worth it. Yeah. Uh-huh.
there's always think about the whole how this all works is your market research and your knowledge of the customer and your ability to step in their shoes. There's
Mm-hmm.
always a victim.
Mm.
We've all worked in a company where we've got that call, not necessarily in the middle of the night when shit goes haywire. Who's getting that call right now when things don't go well because your product doesn't exist in their life? What is that friction?
Mm-hmm.
Where's that pain? What is stopping them from getting that promotion? What is creating that risk of them getting fired? Where is that frustration that they feel every single day? Because they're not saying, God damn it, I wish I had a software to go and solve this freaking problem.
Nobody
They're
says
saying,
that. No.
why the hell is this like this? There's got
Mm-hmm.
to be a better way.
Mm-hmm.
Somebody's always saying that. Or they're like, there must be an opportunity to go and do this. And they have
Mm-hmm.
that idea, but they just don't know how to do it. And this is where you become an asset because you're actually joining the conversation that they're having in their head. Every account strategy, sales strategy comes from marketing, product, and competition.
Hmm.
You have to have those three things. I'm not going to dive into them today because they're huge and they're completely separate beasts. But the one we're talking about right now is market.
Hmm.
Who is your market? And you got to start small. I look at a lot of accounts and I can see why it's confusing because they're targeting 17 different personas, but they don't know any one of them well enough to step in their shoes and understand what they go through every day.
Hmm.
Pick one or two. Now that I've been doing it more, I'll pick 4 or 5, but even that, like, you gotta layer. You gotta think longer than it's like going to the gym. Yes, it's great to go and have these killer workouts, but if they almost kill you because your body's not used to it,
Yeah.
are you gonna do it
And
for the
there.
long term? Me
No.
too, right? So you gotta go and layer, and you gotta go and
Mhm.
stack, and it compounds over time. So pick 1, pick 2. Think of who's the real victim because the owner of the P&L may not give a shit yet. They
It's true.
probably bought the past solution or they enforce the current situation.
Mhm.
So are you going to surprise them with some information or are you like can't call their baby ugly?
No.
We have to come at it smarter. And this is why account strategy makes or breaks your engagement strategy because you got to
Mhm.
figure out what is that low-hanging fruit to route into that account.
Well, and what I've learned from you in this approach and what we've begun experimenting with is it is so much less exhausting to create an account list inside. So we're just going to go tactical for a moment to create an
Okay.
account list inside Sales Navigator of 50 different companies that could be good targets or are likely good targets. And instead of pulling a lead list with every possible stakeholder at those companies, you are pulling a lead list of just 1 to 2 personas that are those victim personas at these companies. And the way you do that is by genuinely talking with people at those companies, making guesses at when you first start about who may know about this problem. Because
Mhm.
and what Nick said is so crucial, and what I know from my own experience, people do not wake up in the middle of the night and ask themselves, "Gosh, if there was only a software product that solved my problem." Nobody there and here's the deal. The 3% who do are already in the buying cycle.
Yeah,
And
they
this
have a
is what
short
you have
list
to
created.
they already have a short list. The people who are already asking about software, all they already are in the buying journey, right? And that's a very small percentage of the market. So you have to be perfectly timed to basically get that conversation going. And it's a lot easier to say, well, what about the 40 to 60% of the market who cares about this problem, or 80% of the market who knows they have this problem, but they aren't necessarily aware of your solution. And so the
Mhm.
entry point is not, here's this solution to your problem. It's, tell me about this problem. How's it going
Yeah.
for you? Right? I'm going to guess that you're struggling with why, or talking with if let's say your target personas are sales directors, instead of starting with sales directors, why don't you start chatting with some SDRs? Why don't you start chatting with some account executives? Say, well, tell me about this company. How's it going? What are those issues that you're struggling? So then you have this massive information, and this doesn't have to take that long because chances are once you have, let's say, 6 to 10 conversations, and this is a ballpark here, those learnings that you have about those 6 to 10 conversations likely apply to every single one or 90% of those personas that you're going to target at all of these accounts. It's behavioral insight. And that's
Mhm.
in marketing language, we always talk about psychographics. So that's psychographic insight instead of demographic insight, and it's understanding what are their behavioral triggers, what's going on in their life that might trigger them to buy. And once you have that knowledge, woo baby.
And you're probably wondering, like, how the hell do I do this? How do I get this
Yes.
like golden nugget?
Yep.
Well, have you ever said something and the person either stopped to think or they went on a rampage because it was emotionally charged? Like, are salespeople born or
Or
made, or
made.
like these
Mhm.
these statements? But what'll happen when you're in a customer interview or you're talking to a prospect is you'll say something that's a trigger. It sucks when you're trying to go and do all these cold calls and you just like feel so burnt out after the first hour because it's not going to go anywhere and you're
Mhm.
watching your quota and you're like, there's no way in hell I'm going to hit that. And if I don't hit that, I don't make money. So why am I even here? It's that internal story, but there's a trigger that starts that story. It's like that knee jerk response. We can tap into that. And this is how it doesn't matter what size that juice worth the squeeze. It just depends how much work goes into the individual account.
Mhm.
But you always put as much effort into the individual problem with that persona. That's
Mhm.
don't say that I'm saying every 3 minutes for everything. No. What
Yeah.
I'm saying is if you spend this time really figuring out that trigger event, your email sequences will work. And the numbers don't lie. Like 60 to 70% of people will respond to that first email if it hits on a trigger.
Mhm.
And
If
there's
it
of
hits on
course
that
different.
behavioral, yeah, that
Yeah.
behavioral insight. Yep.
But I will
And
say,
that's
so
Oh, yeah, go ahead.
I was gonna say, but I will say that's doing your research. There's another side of this you have to
Mhm.
consider. Who paid the bills last year? No, seriously. Who
Uh-huh.
paid the bills last year? And thank you to all of the reps that have been sending me information from doing their win-loss analysis. And Morgan, the numbers are in.
Okay.
So Pareto's law says that
Yes.
80% of the revenue should come from 20% of the company or the deals.
Yes.
Guess what it shook out to so far?
Oh gosh, it's gonna be probably really close.
Any guess?
Probably it'll be a little less than that, so, like,
Yep.
25% of the deals or something like that.
17% other
Whoa.
way.
Other way. Wow.
So if marketing, if finance, if you're super siloed in your company, you are being blindfolded and you're not empowered to do good work.
Mhm.
I don't give a
Yep.
shit if you're in a territory. I don't care if you're in a specialized sales role. This is the point of having RevOps. This is the point of having data flow through so that we can make smarter decisions and work better instead of having to work 10, 12, 16 hours just to hit quota, let alone actually, exceed and do well.
Mhm.
So who paid the bills last year? If the company doesn't know, that's a problem. That is a red flag.
And
Because
that's this win-loss analysis, which in case for those of you who have been to these Friday live shows before, is a recurring theme we continue to bring up. But the reason it's so crucial in my view is if you do not have a critical understanding as an individual sales professional of what kinds of companies closed one last year, then you're shooting in the dark this year.
yeah,
And
you're starting over.
it's so much easier to look at last year's success and say, "Oh, we closed," and just take 10 closed one, 10 closed loss, or take all your closed one. It's however, at least start with 10. That those closed one accounts are going to tell you a lot about the kind of routing, the kind of personas, the kind of market segments, the kind of industries, the size of those accounts, the approaches to those
Mhm.
accounts, especially if your sales teams are at least half decent about taking notes about what worked and what didn't work on the individual account, the timing, the sales cycle, all that information is at your
Who took the
fingertips.
meeting?
Who took the meeting? Was it the VP who took the meeting? Was
Was
it
it a sales rep? Was it
was
a
it a
sales
sales rep?
manager? Was it an
Right, like
HR manager?
yeah. Was it some software engineer, right? Understanding what worked for the accounts that your company has already closed, you can use that information and turn it around into an account strategy that can work for you. Because now it's not blindfolded account strategy, right? You're taking the blindfold off and you can look at your 10 closed one accounts and then you look at the market and you go, those 50 companies look a lot like these 10 accounts that we've already closed. And so those 50 companies make sense. Let's go after them. And seven of these 10 deals started with a conversation with the CTO because maybe you're selling a software product, right?
Mhm.
And that's how it worked in your industry. So then you can turn around and say, okay, the persona that we're most likely to go after on this is a CTO, and just creating that little route. And all it takes is taking off the blindfold.
Yeah. And it works. It really works. And I noticed that a lot of accounts, it's not always the same. Sometimes it's bottom up,
Mm-hmm.
sometimes
Mm-hmm.
it's top down, sometimes it's in the middle. But this is
Yep.
why I can't give you a clear, like, just do this. It always works. As Alex Newman said, his episode came out today, that I wish I had the magical phrase that just made people go, you know what? I'll take 100. I'm so
Yeah.
glad you said that. Like, oh my God,
Mhm.
like you hit the nail on the head. Oh, yes. Actually make it 1,000. Hey, yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah,
uh-huh.
right? But you have to go look
Angelic
back.
choir.
Snowflake built a unicorn on asking 3.
Mhm.
So their win-loss analysis was a little different. What were the biggest accounts we closed? What were the fastest accounts we closed? And what were the biggest accounts we lost?
Mm.
Why? I don't know
Mhm.
what their review period was, if it was every quarter, every like or like once or twice a year. I would recommend more versus less. You don't have to do it like every month. It depends on your sales cycles. But like if you're at least doing it every 6 months or every quarter, this is the problem. And I know Lydia is going to disagree. Software doesn't fix poor communication.
Mm.
You need all these minds to come together with the change management, the idea that we are one team working
Mhm.
together.
Mhm.
So, product needs to come together and tell you what their roadmap is and why and where the hell they got the information from that it even mattered. Not some engineer just went on a freaking rampage and said, this would be some cool shit that we should create. And, spends however many million. And they're like, oh, shit, maybe nobody actually wanted it. Maybe I just thought it was good, you know?
Not that you're so, you're so
And then marketing,
Mhm.
they create all of this collateral. They do all these like messaging and fluffy bullshit. And you're like, why?
Why? Why does
Who
that
did you
matter? Yep.
talk to? Who did you verify this information? What knowledge do you have that I do not?
Mhm.
It's
And
so critical.
in my experience, a majority of the time, maybe not 7 out of 10 or 8 out of 10, but probably at least 5 out of 10, marketing's just making it up. And that's important for you to know. And
Morgan, that wasn't important for me to know. That's bad. Damn
but
it.
like let's have an honest conversation. I love how feisty you are this morning, by the way, Nick, about all this because
Ugh.
I, in my experience, what happens if marketing doesn't have discipline around customer interviews and actually understanding what pieces of the market make a lot of sense? What marketing does, I can speak from experience here, is they make assumptions. They just make assumptions to create brand personas. They just say, oh, well, it's probably this. Okay. And they might be good guesses, but they might also not be good guesses. And they might be good guesses for 40% of your customers, but they're going to miss out on the other 60%. So,
Mm-hmm.
in most companies, for marketing departments that don't have the discipline to interact with the market and to interact with you as a sales team, sometimes the collateral that they produce is meaningless. And that's so important for you to know as a sales professional because if you have collateral that's useless, don't use it.
Yeah.
Like
And so,
I I
yeah.
it's not
And they're usually
important.
the ones that are creating the account lists too. And you're like, why?
Yep.
Why this?
Yep.
Why
Why
this
these
person?
accounts?
Where did this come from?
Mhm.
And it's so disappointing when you see that because I'll let you on a secret. They shouldn't be talking to sales. They should be talking to customer success because they're
Yeah,
the ones
it's
that see
true.
people actually see the real value. That's why they all
Yeah.
need to talk and they all need to meet and keep
Mhm.
that dialogue open to tune things. But when marketing does an amazing job,
Oh.
there's a hack that I'm about to
Mhm.
tell you that I have used in all of the roles I've ever worked in, and it still plays true. Marketing creates case studies.
Yes.
They're always stated the same way:
Mhm.
problem, solution, what happened.
Yep. Results.
But did you notice that they always put quotations in there of somebody talking, what they
Mhm.
actually said, the customer's own words? That's a great email.
Huge.
It's a
Huge opportunity.
great email or a LinkedIn message or you know who can sell anything better than you? The person that saw value from it.
Mhm.
Let your customers sell for you. But you guys got to understand, we're not a one-trick pony.
Mm-mm.
There's layers you can stack on these to go and create consistency, like posting content on LinkedIn, to cold calling, emailing, and social selling, to going and speaking at trade shows or being on podcasts or commenting on LinkedIn. But you have to do it one at a time. You have to understand what is your strategy? What are you expecting to happen? And how are you going to track that it's doing what you wanted? If not, it's gone. Don't
Mhm.
don't waste your time. We only have 40 hours or you should be working less. And so, well, I'll wrap back, Morgan. But so
Yep.
now you've done all this research, you feel empowered, you can take on the world. What the hell do you do now? So if you're under
Yep.
1,000, pick one persona, one market segment.
Under 1,000 average contract value, just
Yep,
to be clear, not 1,000 employees.
correct.
Yep.
And thank you for the clarification. Pick that one persona, write out your entire messaging, and understand that trigger for them.
Hmm.
Figure out the social proof that you did. That's what somebody said. What is the solution? And then a simple opt in, open to a conversation,
Worth a chat.
worth a chat. It doesn't matter if you're cold calling, email, those are just engagements. Engagements,
Hmm.
part of your engagement strategy. And you need to look at, as you're going through, keep track. Are they responding to phone, email, LinkedIn, a combo, and track.
Hmm.
Track where you're getting responses from because we have limited time and resources. Use them where they get the best results. That is why you can't look at today and tomorrow. You need to start looking backwards and forwards to be an asset to the company and to own it.
Hmm.
And so what worked? So you're using a sequencer with your emails. No, maybe do 4 emails. I've seen lots of people get really great success with Justin Michaels Spears, where they do a cluster. They do that initial email that they go through the information. What's the trigger?
Hmm.
What is the social proof? What's your solution? Call to action. And then the next email is you reply back to your email. Thoughts? Question mark.
Hmm.
And then you do them in tight clusters. So it could be like 24 hours apart. And then you wait a week or 3 days or 5 days. Play with that. This is what you should be A B testing. And then
Hmm.
you can even reply back one more time with a visual because our minds actually struggle with words. They turn it into visuals. And that's why it's so easy to remember places by what landmarks were there versus what the name on the sign was.
And just to take a step back from this for a moment, the reason that this is so important, the reason that around here tactics are dime a dozen and strategy is where your money is made, is because at the end of the day, you can run whatever email sequence you want. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, I wouldn't recommend it. You could run an 18 email sequence. It may not work. You could run a cluster sequence with 4 emails. You could run Justin Michaels Spears. You could look at Will Allreds and you do, one cold outreach, one follow up. Maybe you're using LinkedIn DMs. Maybe you're cold calling. Maybe you have a script. Maybe you don't. All those are tactics. At the end of the day, what matters is what are you inserting inside? What insights, what value are you inserting inside those tactical engagements that get
Mm-hmm.
people curious and engaged with what you have to offer? And the mistake that a lot of people make is they half-ass this early term work where they say, okay, well, let's just say, we go after computer software, IT, and high-tech companies. We talk to all of C-suite, and also we talk to VP levels, and sometimes we talk to sales directors.
And maybe
And
HR and some a little bit of
yeah,
marketing
and
and
and generally they have more than 500 employees, but we're happy to talk to those who have less than 500 employees.
or
And
more.
yeah, we looked at our closed one, but there's not like we couldn't find a strong pattern out of that, so I guess it doesn't matter. So what we're going to do is we're just going to test out some different messages, right? And so as you end up with a cadence that's very generic or an outreach that's not useful at all, and then we wonder, why aren't we getting any feedback? Why aren't we getting any attention? Why is nobody replying? Well, the reality is you've built all of your engagement strategy around an account strategy that has no value and has no purpose and has no meaning. And instead starting with, and while we've covered less than 1,000, we should talk about more than that, starting with a tailored account list with a particular lead list of personas, 1 to 2 personas, who hit that victim role, who suffer as a result of the consequences of their inaction, and that your product or service can solve. And then tailoring all of your outreach to just those personas at just those companies and
Mhm.
seeing how it goes, that allows you to A B test in a meaningful way. An A B test has no meaning if you're comparing a response from a CEO to a sales director. Truly, there's no value to be gained from that because the worldview, the behavioral insights, the context, all of
All
those are so different between somebody who occupies a C suite role to somebody who occupies a director role. And saying, well, we tried this outreach sequence for a CEO and a sales director, and it seems like the director worked better. That doesn't mean that it didn't. It just means like that wasn't the approach for the CEO. It doesn't mean that CEOs aren't open to your product. It just requires a different approach. So,
Mhm.
doing all of this upfront work is a prerequisite to your engagement strategy. And it makes you just so much more focused. It makes it so much easier. It's so much less exhausting because you're not having to like reinvent the wheel every time you reach out to somebody. You're just nailing these insights over and over and over.
Amen. And so now we've conquered the 1,000 because you
Hmm.
can't dig in deep enough because the juice isn't worth the squeeze to go on a company level or an individual level, individually at every single one. Well, the next stage
Yep.
when they're over that and they're getting into, like 2,500 to into the low five figures,
Hmm.
now it's worth looking at a company level. What is happening in that specific company that triggers you to outreach? Do some type of sequence. Why did you put them into your sales strategy? Why now? Why them?
Hmm.
So, did they just have a funding round?
Hmm.
Is it because you had a customer experience that sucked? And you're like, hey, I could fix that. Is it
Uh-huh.
because they just promoted someone? Is it because they were in the news? Is it because they posted a piece of content? What is that company piece that changed things? Is it because you looked at the account and you saw that they posted a strategy and you knew that you could help with that strategy and be a resource to them? You have to go and put your detective hat on, and you need to find a legitimate reason to go and emphasize that trigger.
Mm.
And now as they get bigger and they're in that high five figure, six figure plus, you can't do that. It's not enough. Because now when you get to that individual at the highest level, there's risk involved, real risk involved to that person to go and be your champion. So how are you taking the risk away, and how are you showing them that you picked them specifically, not just, I'm the VP of sales at whatever company that showed up on a LinkedIn sales nav search.
Right.
This is the levels, and it
And that's
changes your entire strategy.
and let's stay here for a moment because you just touched on something that gets talked about in corners but not generally of LinkedIn, which is personalization at this level of or engagement strategy is not name and title.
Oh my god.
Personalization is not a sequence where you create the little brackets and you put, hey, first name, saw you were the position at company. That's not personalization at this level of account strategy. It
Mhm.
is it is so much more uh, insight, so much more behaviorally driven that you are able to speak specifically why them, why
Mhm.
now, right? Why their company, you know, and this is also, and if you follow Will Allred out on LinkedIn, he's an email coach. He has a great product called Lavender. One thing that you'll notice in every personalization sequence he does is it is related back to something at the company, and it is related to your social proof that you can provide. So, for example, theoretically, saw you just raised a Series C. We helped three other companies who also just recently raised a Series C accomplish XYZ, right? Or do ABC, whatever it ends up being. And that level of personalization is different than just saying, uh hey name, hey role. It's not, that's not personalization at this level. It may be considered personalization when you're in that sub 1000 level because you don't have enough time, but when you get
Mhm.
into these larger contract values, personalization now becomes important beyond just a name and title. Anyways.
Yeah, and think about it, like, right now, right in the chat. What level of personalization are you doing, and is it worth the squeeze?
Is it worth the squeeze?
If you're selling high six figures, it's okay to take an hour per account. Actually, you should. And like
Mhm.
Lydia had alluded to in the comments, you should have a dynamic org chart that you're working and you're looking at the sphere of influence, and that will actually guide your buying criteria as you're working the account.
Mhm.
This really, if we're not doing this level of detail, then we should be an e-commerce play.
True.
If there's not a prescription or there's not collaboration, there's no us.
Mhm.
Sales is not going anywhere,
Mm-mm.
but our approach needs to evolve as our buyers are looking for more. And so, less than 1,000, look at the overall industry, look at the overall persona you're targeting. Don't take on too much. Pick one or two.
Mhm.
Next month, before you start your next campaign, look at what worked. Reset. Go again. Now going once you've reset, look at another persona to target. Go again. Go
Mhm.
again. So it's compounding every single time. So now we talked about last week we talked about how to go and do this passively, that
Mhm.
indirect strategy.
Mhm.
This week we're talking about direct and actively pursuing accounts. Well, there's another thing that we haven't talked about, but you can't find this out until later is what are those trigger events that can make you add somebody into your account or move now that they need you now? This is a gamble because if you're seeing the trigger event too late, they've already got a short list buying criteria set and they're probably already moving through the buying process. They're 85% done.
Yep.
But what are those early trigger signs that somebody needs you? Share value dropping, not seeing them. They used to have a booth on the corner over here and over there and over there. They're not on bus stations anymore. They're not running radio ads. You've noticed that they've cut, a bunch of people. They just fired a manager. It's unique to every situation, but there will be trends when you're watching for them. And this is why you have to reevaluate every time. And this is why when salespeople have been doing this for 2 or 3 years, you're like,
Mhm.
what the hell? Like you do this so naturally. It's like you're just having a conversation and like it just happens. Like people just throw freaking money at you. Like, what the hell?
Mhm.
This is why they have earned wisdom that makes them an asset that they couldn't fire if they wanted to. If they did, they're an idiot because they could get a job anywhere.
Mhm.
And it's this reevaluation of the strategy each month, no more than every 2 months, that makes or breaks your progress. Use this to ramp yourself. If you're struggling right now, actively work those accounts. Take one of these channels, and if you need help, just reach out. We can help get you started.
Absolutely. DM us.
And start listening to other podcasts. Blissful Prospecting. J-Bay does an incredible job. Follow Will
Amazing.
Allred.
Mhm.
Justin Michaels. Read his book if you want to learn how to use different technology. Like you open yourself up, listen to the different strategies, but have a game plan.
Mhm.
Use the available information and don't, if nobody's giving it to you, own it. Do it for
Mhm.
yourself. Because when you get known for something and you are trusted at scale, you are the asset, not them. It's like the difference between ring ring ring, hey Morgan, this
Hello.
is Nick from Apple.
Mhm.
You're going to pay attention because I just name
Mhm.
dropped a company that you know and you're like, what the hell is Apple calling me for?
Mhm.
But if they're like, ring, 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 hey, it's Gary Vaynerchuk.
Yeah.
Sorry, what?
Hi, Gary. How you doing?
You
You know?
become a recognized name, and it might be just a flex in your niche. That's
Mhm.
okay. Who cares?
Yeah,
You don't
who
need to be a
cares?
household name around the world because it's not relevant.
Mm-mm.
This is the whole thing. Personalization at scale is tough. Relevance at scale is realistic.
Mhm.
But if you're not taking the time to do all of this and play the different layers,
Mhm.
you are a victim of circumstance. And that's not okay.
Mm-mm.
And then once you start to really tone this in and you really get to see that where it streamlines and where like it clicks and you're like, okay, now it's moving. Now I can predict my forecast at 90% or more.
Mhm.
That tells you that what you're doing is locked in. So now we look at tech.
Yeah.
We're 40 minutes into a live show. 40 minutes into a live show talking about account strategy, and I brought up technology once.
Yeah.
But when I get people that reach out to me on LinkedIn right now, the first thing they ask me is what technology, what
What
app,
tech?
what
Yep.
sequencer will fix this problem?
Oh,
None.
man, this is a rant and a half for me. Woo.
None. Nothing will fix this problem because you
None.
didn't do the work. You started on level 4.
Yes.
You don't know what the vision of the company is and where they're going. You know what values are important, so you don't know what's designing their market, product, and competitive strategy. You don't know how you stand out against competitors.
Mm-mm.
You don't have a sales strategy of how you're going to go and work that. And then
Mhm.
because you don't have the sales strategy aligning with everything else, your engagement strategy is a shotgun blast.
Yep. And
Technology comes after.
technology augments what's already there. One of the big I have a quick story about this that's not actually sales related, but
Would you
I
tell
had
me
the I had the distinct pleasure of running a startup week actually for a couple years. It was great. It was so much fun. Startup weeks, if you've never been, even if you're not in the startup land, it's just a bunch of fun. Um, well, the problem with running a startup week is all of your promotional material doesn't have a direct call to action. It's always an
again?
indirect call to action. Literally, it's this event is great. You should show up. Like that's the most that we can do because it's free. It's paid for by the community. There's like, sure, they can register and create a schedule, but at the end of the day, what you want is people, butts and seats. You want people in the room. So the challenge in that marketing is how do I how do I get people to pay attention? How do I get them excited, engaged, inspired, ready to come? Will remember the dates. Will open up the emails because remember, I mean, startup weeks do a lot of promotional emails, and the reality for me, I wanted people to open up every single email. I wanted them to engage and see what was on offer. And especially for those people who had already registered, the people who were already customers, I wanted them to get excited and engaged and inspired. And let me tell you the dirty little secret of it all. Technology does not matter. You can use whatever email sequencer, you can use whatever I don't know, outreach system, you can use whatever CRM, the whole tech stack that you have augments what's already there. At the end of the day,
Mhm.
what I could have done with startup week is I could have grabbed the CSV of everybody who we had on our mailing list. I could have done a mail merge in Outlook, would not recommend, but I could have. And I could have sent one email a week, just personally, just write it up, and it wouldn't have been too much different than what we were doing through our promotional email service. And that's because the tech doesn't really matter. What matters is the value, the quality, the content, the insight, the connection, the ability to engage somebody. And all of that is based on fundamental insights about who they are, why them, why now. And tech simply augments. It only accelerates what's already there. So, if you don't have a lot of insights and you're running a very generic sales strategy because you either don't commit, can't commit, your leadership hasn't committed, there's not a lot of direction around that. And then you buy a bunch of tech, guess what the tech's going to do? It's just going to do that, but faster.
Mhm.
But if you have a really tailored account strategy, you have a very tailored engagement strategy based on research, based on insights about the personas that you're going after, and then you buy a bunch of tech, tech's also going to accelerate that. Tech is not the silver bullet. It's not going to solve problems. If you can't, I mean, obviously there's some issues with this as a piece of advice, but generally speaking, if you can't do it manually, doing it automatically won't help, right?
Just playing with fire today, Morgan.
I know.
Um, I don't want to shift gears too much, but one thing I want to just go and start talk about. All this is working.
Mhm.
Please God, don't use these as Hail Marys. Use these as accelerators.
Right.
What are some accelerators that come up that are situational and timely? We just released a wicked case study.
Yep.
Who needs to know about this testimony, like this case study? Who can I help? Why do they need to hear it? Case studies release. Perfect. Webinar with a very tight, tailored audience, not this shotgun bullshit blast that I see in LinkedIn every week.
Oh man.
Who is the audience?
Yep.
Invite them.
Mhm.
Be their partner in crime. Hey, like, I know if you can't make it, what parts do you want to know? I can send you timestamps of the parts I think are most critical. So there's the game before, during, and after. Hybrid events are powerful. Or somebody does a keynote speech, or somebody like speaks at a trade show, or numerous, or another one is a podcast. You have to leverage all of these things. Or maybe, another one comes out. Another strategy you can use is you want to speak on a podcast because you realize talking to customers, you're like, people are surprised that I know this. This obviously isn't common knowledge. Who what is a platform I can stand on that we have a shared audience but we don't compete,
Mhm.
that we can blast this out.
And
It's great.
and what's crucial about this, just on a tactical note, it's not good enough in my book to share a webinar, to share a podcast, share a case study, let's say over LinkedIn DMs, and say, "Hey, we just released this case study. Thought you might find it valuable." Mm-mm. Okay, that's not that's not going to get anybody's attention. And for us, it's easier. It's copy pasta. You write it once with the link, copy, paste, send, 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 send. Okay, I get it. But the difference between, hey, we released this case study, or we're hosting this webinar, or whatever. And instead of saying, thought it might be valuable to you, which is such a passive, indirect call to action, it is instead based on what we were talking about 2 weeks ago, or based on, what we had discussed the last time we chatted. I believe that this would be very valuable for you and your company. That's so much more direct. And
Mhm.
it's also personalized to their situation, their context. It also adds in your insight. It's also perceived as a value add. It's not just promotional. It's you, if you're on the receiving end of that, which I have been, I realized that that person is acting almost like a curator. That person is curating value for me. And so if I get a DM, which is a great ask, that's based on a conversation we had 2 months ago or whatever, and they're just working me as a lead, they say, "Hey, last time we chatted, we talked about X. We're hosting this webinar that's going to directly address this. Would you like to attend? Can I get a ticket for you?" And make that really direct ask. To me, as the customer or prospect in this case, I'm like, wow, this person's really intentional. This person's curating value. That's
Like,
crazy.
holy crap.
Yeah. And so, as the sales professional, as the person who's actually having to do that, it's that mindset. Let's curate value for our prospects. It's not just a shotgun,
Yep.
it's intentional.
And so what else? Pricing's changing.
Hmm.
Pricing's a trigger. You want to get in on the deal. You know somebody was close. This has been abused, so I would use it sparingly
Hmm.
because a lot of people will play price changes in 24 hours. So people are kind of burned out on price.
Yep.
Regulation is a big one. Regulations changing. You're going to want to get on this now because this literally will not be available later, or this problem is not a problem now, but it's going to be in the next 72 hours or whatever. So the sooner you can find out, the more of an asset and the more you can control that buying criteria. Product launch. You got the ins on from the product team that you're launching a new product or a new feature. Re-engage a dead lead, or look at that new, where that niche value would be and who do you want to reach out to. But it's diving deep. A lot of people go on Google Alerts and use link the sales nav to get generic hiring, firing, promotion, funding
Hmm.
rounds. Those are common.
Hmm.
You got to step outside of that to figure out why.
Hmm.
Was it a certain role that got fired? Did they just onboard a new technology? Are they using a certain technology? Are they using archaic technology? But what are those triggers? What are those events that make the right time now? But do not make this your focus. This is where I see people fail over and over and over again. This is
Yes.
living on a hope and a prayer.
Yes.
This isn't your strategy.
Mm-mm.
These are
Say it louder
accelerators.
for the people in the back, right?
You can't live on these. And it's hard when you don't want to make cold calls and emails because
Hmm.
maybe you feel like you don't deliver real value.
Hmm.
That is Do this research for you. Don't
Mhm.
do it for the company, screw them.
Yeah.
Do it for you because you're a professional. And if a doctor allowed the patient to diagnose themselves, pick their product, tell them when they wanted it, and all that else, they get fired and fined.
Mhm.
Think about that when you're approaching these people. You earned the right to call them because you figured out why them versus anyone else. Even if it's something under $1,000,
Mhm.
you've done the work.
And this is where I see a lot of sales, and you've mentioned this before, and to restate it in a different way today, I really see great salespeople as experts on problems and solutions to those problems. Because wherever you go, whatever company you work for, the product's going to be different. All right. It's a product. There's thousands of products. And honestly, in any one niche industry, there are dozens of products to choose from, unless if you're like some rare but possible category killer. What great salespeople do differently is they become experts on the problems of their customers, being able to talk about the problems in the customer's own words, using not your own language but the language of your customers, because what's going to resonate, for example, if your personas are financial executives, CFOs, M&A people, whatever, the stuff that's going to resonate with them is a particular way to talk about the problem. And the stuff that's going to resonate with data scientists and software engineers who work inside data is a particular way of talking about that problem that makes sense to them.
Mhm.
So, becoming really good at that, becoming an expert at talking about the problems, and instead of talking about the product as the solution, just talking about the solution to those problems. Oh, unbeatable combo, because now it doesn't have much to, again, nobody
The
wakes up
vampire
and
sales
goes,
jumps into my
right.
mind.
Nobody wakes up and goes, "Oh, I can't wait to buy the next piece of software." Like, nobody does that. Or the 3% in the market who do are already looking and already have a short list, right? But
Mhm.
we're not always targeting those people. We want to get people who aren't necessarily on a buyer's journey yet. So they don't care about your software. They don't care about your product. Your job is to make them care. And your first foot in the door has nothing to do with your product. The product is a means to an end. They have a problem, the product solves that problem. And so the solution, the end state, the new state of being, the new reality that they get to live as a result is what marketers are usually really good at identifying, which is emotional end states. More so, for example, more peace of mind, more cash flow, less silos in an organization. But all of those words align, all those concepts align with a particular behavioral insight around the problem, which is we hate silos, we're struggling with cash flow, we feel burnt out, whatever. And becoming really good at linking those together and simply positioning or inserting the product as that means to an end. But all of that requires this upfront work, right? Understanding who your customers are, where they are, why them, why now, etc., and everything we talked about today.
I just want to plant a seed.
Hmm.
We appreciate you guys so much. We're
So much.
53 minutes in, and we really appreciate all of you that are sitting here and, listening to us go through this and being able to share with you. If there is one person, just one person that would really get value from this, that would be a big benefit to them, could you please send it to them or
Hmm.
comment them and tag them in so that they can join the conversation because they'll have access to this recording? Thank you. We really appreciate it.
Seriously, absolutely. All right, Nick. Last things to do. We've covered a big gauntlet. Anything else?
You got to reset too. Like, just think about it.
Hmm.
Reset and celebrate. Set milestones for
Yes.
yourself. And part of all this process is knowing your numbers to not hit quota, but exceed quota and make it easier for yourself. But think of it, make it easier to also recharge your batteries. Burnout, all you guys, if you're there, I ended up in the hospital and almost died.
Hmm.
I was 3 days away where they didn't know what was going to happen. I wore my burnout with a badge of honor because I thought investment banking was all about, who could work the most hours and make the most calls, and you'd, wave it as a flag of, look what I did. Nobody
Yep.
cares anymore. What they care about is, do you have a healthy pipeline, and
Hmm.
are you getting the results you want? That's what I care about for you guys.
Hmm.
So I find, depending on your sales cycles, depending on how much stress you're carrying, plan your days accordingly. Write it, time block, write it in stone, and also plan for holidays. Every 3 months, take a week off. You don't think you can afford it? You can't afford not to. You'll actually boost your creativity. It also gets you a way to think clearly and reassess as you're going through and planning your quarters.
Hmm.
Take the time you need to recharge. Take the time you need to set up your schedule. Take the time you need to build out the routine required to hit your numbers. Reverse engineer it. If you need help, if you need somebody to talk to because you're feeling burnt out, both our inboxes are open.
Absolutely. As an
If you feel like,
entrepreneur, man.
yeah, director leading the sales division, if you need help, we are here. You do not need to suffer in silence.
Hmm.
That's not okay.
It's not.
Reach out.
Hmm.
We got you guys. That's why we do this.
Yep. And as a entrepreneur who's been in charge of my own sales and everything else that comes with that, I too, I mean, burnout is freaking rough. I was going to say something else. But we don't need the little
Clearly.
explicit note on our podcast episode today. It is, and definitely, you know, take the time that you need to be successful. And the reality, what we're doing is just resetting everything, right? We're
Mm-hmm.
saying, sales, I don't believe this. Sales does not have to be a hustle. Okay.
No,
And actually
shouldn't be.
conceptualizing it as a hustle is probably detrimental to your own circumstance. You get to work the kind of job you want to work. Okay. And maybe your company culture isn't supportive of that. And that's a conversation you may need to have with yourself. But even at companies that are supportive of that, maybe you're running yourself into the ground because sales leadership hasn't supported with you. They're just like, hey, get into these accounts, etc. Like, take that time, reset. I've been at burnout. I've had anxiety
Mm.
attacks in the middle of it. And that sort of consequence is unacceptable in my book if you have the opportunity to do something different and to reset the scales, right? The reason all this upfront work matters is it makes all the back end work so much easier. It's a couple weeks, maybe a little more of an investment that you're doing every so often, but then your days can actually feel for me they actually feel fun. They're like, "Oh,
Mm-hmm.
I'm on top of this. Don't tell anyone, but I actually kind of feel on top of this for once." And that's a great feeling to have. So, this work is so important because it allows us to create space in our lives for the things that are actually meaningful. So, truly, this is what's been going on in your life. Shoot us DM. I'd love to chat. This is stuff I talk about all the time, actually.
And if your part of your routine isn't working out, if
Hmm.
it's not learning, thank you for making us part of your learning. But put some other time in. Learn every day. Give yourself 15 minutes or a half an hour to read. Take a
Yeah.
course. If you're struggling with your CRM, take some of the small bite-sized courses just so you feel comfortable and it removes that stress.
Hmm.
We talked about friction in our jobs. It's also our job to do that for ourselves.
Hmm.
Work out. Get outside of the house. Play to our circadian rhythm. See the sunlight. 'Cause I don't get it in my little hidey hole, so I got to go upstairs and see if it's dark or light. But
Uh-huh.
do this for yourself. Take care of yourself. Sales is a profession that is super rewarding when you set yourself up for the long term and don't kill yourself in the short term.
Hmm. With that, I think we should close out the hour with a big hearty thank you to everyone who's here today. I've seen all of your comments come in, and thank you for all of your insights in the chat today and some of the questions that came up. As always, we got a podcast that this gets repurposed onto. Maybe that's where you're listening to this. If you haven't checked it out, you should check it out. We've got some great interviews these last few weeks, and uh, we've been hosting some Monday night work rooms, some opportunities to sit down on more particular topics and less of a chat, more of like a Zoom room, work through specific stuff that's on your mind. So if you're interested, Monday nights, we've been doing this for about an hour, a little over. If you want to attend, send us a DM. We'd love to send you along an invite. It's a great time. There's a lot of cool people who are in there, especially sales professionals, and get a space to share and talk about this kind of stuff, work through whatever problems are coming up. So happy Friday to everyone, and thanks for joining this B2B Power Hour.
You got it, guys. Go get it.
Go get it. Bye.
Bye.